Hey guys, this video, I guess will go a little diverge into the more complex implications of a network society, the philosophy, and perhaps the cultural transformations that will happen. I was discussing some overall very broad cultural phenomena, the demand for transparency, because we will all be transparent. I mean, we almost already are. Look at Facebook, look at um, a lot of these programs and websites have a lot of our information, but everybody's information is up there. Photographs, all of that. So there'll be a lot of transparency and a lot of personalization, you know? We're openly private. Very strange paradox, isn't it? We're instantly communicating with people all over the world, and it'll eventually come to the point, I'm sure, where we can speak to people instead of making videos like this. We will, of course, but we'll be able to speak like this on cell phones, which we can already do, but a lot of this will be more commonplace, much easier, much more instantaneous. Naturalization of technology. So we're not escaping into the internet. The internet is suddenly brought into everyday life and intensifying things that we naturally do: talk, communicate, think, feel, uh, things like that. So, what implications will there be with philosophy? How will this change the way we think? What kind of new paradigms are happening? I mean, if the 21st century was a rude awakening, a postmodernist shift, right? That's not the only thing that happened. What will the thinkers be in the 21st century? What sort of ideas will be prevalent? I'm sure we can't say for sure what they are, but we can at least have some idea at what's already happening and what people are already talking about today. And these ideas seem to be pattern-seeking ideas. At least, people are trying to propose that there are bigger pictures to things, such as the evolution of a society, or perhaps even the evolution of human civilization overall, or human beings overall. Now, yes, we have radical theories like Ray Kurzweil and the singularity. Then we have other thinkers such as Ken Wilber, who talk about how society is actually going to become more integrated in the sense that we're able to see bigger pictures and bigger patterns that underlie a lot of chaotic things. And I guess we can say we're already beginning to see this, especially if you look at biological evolution. We can distinguish patterns that have been happening. And one of the most obvious ones, of course, is the tendency for life to become more complex over time. Not every organism, but life in general becomes more complex over time. This is it's a fact. It's obvious now because we have the wealth of information we have. Technology seems to be following the same sort of pattern that all organic life does. And societies, human societies, who some of us have touted that we are now free of evolution's mindless drives, still seem to be following the patterns that evolution has set forth, which is to become more complex over time, to become more organized over time, to adapt more and more complex forms of life. Ray Kurzweil thinks that one of the next steps of evolution, of, of the evolution of this planet, is technology, artificial intelligence, um, technologically based life forms where we can create artificial cells, artificial organs, and eventually artificial organisms. When that happens, self-replicating artificial organisms happens, that will be a profound shift in the evolution of Earth from organic based life to non-organic based life. Um, Now, he's saying there's a bigger picture at work here. For some reason, the universe seems to be evolving higher and more complex forms of life. Ken Wilber probably would agree here with his theories about evolution, the impulses of evolution to become more complex, to become self aware. Um, not necessarily becoming self aware, but definitely more complex. Or perhaps, maybe, we'll figure out with complexity become self awareness. I don't know. What do you think? These are all hypothetical statements. These are all theories. These are all claims based off of observations. We think we're seeing patterns at work here. We're seeing bigger pictures in many things. They may not necessarily end up being entirely correct. they may be much more complex than we think. The evolution itself is very complex, but if what's happening now is what's going to be happening more intensely in a few years, then we're becoming a civilization of pattern seekers, of people who look for bigger pictures and things. We're going to see some people argue that pre-modern thought is going to be making a huge comeback in this century. I would argue that pre-modern thought, and defining that as, of course, bigger picture, grand narratives, these sort of things, will be popping back. I would argue that we're not necessarily returning to the same mode of thought that our predecessors, our ancestors have. I think it's going to be even more evolved, but it will resemble the previous. I think Wilber calls this the pre-trans fallacy, mistaking a further development for a former development, a previous stage. So I think these things have a lot of credence. It is difficult to back them up in mainstream scientific communities, unfortunately, simply because science is a very slow process, so to speak. At least paradigms are very slow processes, because it takes time to make sure the data is accurate and our theories and hypotheses about the data are accurate. This may change too. There may be some major shifts in a couple of years, especially in the realm of science. So what we may have in the 21st century is a philosophy where, not that everything is relative, but there are bigger pictures to things, and we may have more influence over reality than we think. That reality is a hologram. It's generated. This is crazy stuff, but we're discovering this through quantum physics and very similar studies. So whether or not this is all going to happen is, of course, debatable. But that doesn't mean it's not going to happen, and there's plenty of reason to think it would. I think the evidence is on the table, and only more will begin to pile up. All of this, coupled with the transformation of a decentralized society, we're going to see a very different type of civilization than we have right now, even right now. As far as religion, I think I'm pretty sure that older forms of organized religion will fall away. Now, it's argued that we're returning to fundamentalism in this century. I think that's only because we're in a chaotic transitional period where a lot of the old modes of thought are in their death throes. They're intensifying because they're at the end of an age. They're reacting to great transformations by reinforcing old modes of thought. Afraid of the unknown, they're fighting to keep things the same. And not only the same, but going back. We're going to go back even further. We're going to go back to fundamentals and all that. I don't think these are going to win out in the end. I would hope they wouldn't. It is not that we're guaranteed some kind of safe passage into the next century. We're going to have to try very, very hard, and we're going to have to really push for these ideas and really try to implement them as naturally and as easily as possible. So it's going to take a lot of work, but like any kind of major paradigm shift, I'm sure it will happen. And I don't think organized religion as it stands will be the same. I think a lot of organized religions will fall to become more general and more open-minded. So, you know the term spiritual but not religious? I feel like that will become much more prevalent. Not that religion and custom and tradition will completely disappear, but society will become much more open to different types of practice and see underlying relationships between religions. And that will be the driving force that de-emphasizes particularity and emphasizes interconnection, interdependence. So, as Einstein said, Buddhism's concepts of interdependence, of emptiness, etc., are the religion of the future. And I believe to some degree he may be correct. I think there will be a lot of big shifts that are happening. There'll be a lot of potential dangers, but at the same time, there's a lot of potential for us to transform society and find a new way of living. Thanks for listening.